Hey, John.
There. Hey, Nick.
How are you?
Hey, look at us. Look at us.
Yeah, we're fairly well matched.
Is this for the Negretto of troubled blood? Um,
I
seriously,
yeah, I
I
guess so. So it's this is a big one. So this is a major work. It's your favorite novel of the Robert Galbraith series. I'm less equivocal, but it's certainly amongst my favorites. My problem is I've got a terrible attack of recentism. So I do dearly love the most recent book I've read. So I can't yeah, I can't separate that emotional attachment to look at it too dispassionately, but it is a great work.
yeah. I'm afraid our listeners are going to be like, oh, here goes John again about how great troubled blood is. But yeah, we decided to do two of these conversations. They can shed conversations about troubled blood because there was so much. And I went back and there's a troubled blood page at Hogwarts Professor that just lists all the things that we did when it first came out. And it's astonishing. I went back and I had all these ideas. I want to do the true book. Hello, Presbyteria. We're do the true book, and the astrology and the fairy queen pieces. I mean, it's I hope we can share in these two talks something of just the majesty of this book, because in the most intense time of Rowling's life, assuming that, well, I think we should assume that she did most of the writing in 2018, 2019.
I think so. So it was quite early in 2020 that she showed the photograph of her completed manuscript. We still didn't know the name at that point. We had a couple of months to wait for the name, but she showed the completed manuscript then.
Um, really, the idea that her tweet heard round the world and the first shot in the trans wars, as far as Rowling was concerned, must come after she's done the greater part of the work on this landmark novel. If Rowling's written a War and Peace or a Crime and Punishment, it's troubled blood. And I imagine just the confidence you must have had after completing a work of that strength, and knowing it's going to land after she's been destroyed, after she's been canceled and all those things. Fascinating. I look forward to the critical biography when we learn what really happened. Because I hope I live long enough that I'll be able to see that. Who knows if we're going to see that. Anyway, what are we doing here, Nick? Why are we? Why are our backgrounds like this?
So what are we doing with the Lake and Shed? So in case you have just come straight here, because Troubled Blood is also your favorite book, we have placed ourselves in the middle of J.K. Rowling's metaphor for her creative process. So I am sat here next to this bucolic lake in South Wales, because the lake is where Rowling sees herself when she gets her inspiration. Sometimes unformed, like molten glass, but she pulls it from her subconscious, from her unresolved issues, and this is how she visualizes dragging out that idea. Then she takes it over to her shed, represented by Dr. John Granger, all the way over in Oklahoma City, in his hot shed, where she will put in the hard graft. This is applying her artistry and her literary techniques to form that idea into a proper narrative. So when she looks at a piece of work that she's done, or even that other people have done, she can identify what is pure inspiration. That's all lake, that needs a bit of shed work. And then she'll look at other bits and she'll think, oh, that's all shed. There's no inspiration in that. That's all shed. It needs a bit more lake. So
that's So well said. So well said. And maybe at the end of these things we should say, so is this work, more lake or more shed? Is this too sheddy? Is this still wet from the lake? What's that about? Troubled blood. Boy, this is right in the shed.
There's
The
a
shed
lot of shed in
roundhouse
there.
here, baby.
Yeah.
This is astonishing stuff. But there's a ton of lake material in here as well. I was struck when I was reviewing all of these posts that we had done about that one of the things we haven't talked about in the lake, we talk about her unconscious struggling with unresolved issues. We talk about her core beliefs. We talk about her family experience, her key relationships, but we never talk about her religious faith.
No.
That C.S. Lewis said, basically, if someone is doing imaginative work, then what you need to understand is how they understand the world, because they're going to reshape that and project that into their imaginative world. And certainly Rowling has done that. Whether you think she's spiritual, not religious, or you think that she's a good Anglican, I kind of shudder at that. But anyway, that we don't talk about that, and boy, it comes out in Troubled Blood.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about. I'm going to talk about tomorrow, because today we have dedicated to looking at the stars.
Well, first, what we like to do before we get into the lake and the shed is put it a little bit into context. So we cover where Rowling is, what she's doing in the timeline between the previous release and this one. Now, we took the Ichabog release as being its online publication. I insisted because that's where I first came across it, and I think it's a minority of people would have come across it first on physical book publication day. So the gap between Ichabog Online and publication date for Troubled Blood was only a few months, so not a lot can have happened, right? If we just quickly review what happened through that. So there's a big competition for the Ichabog. So to coincide with the first publication, there's lots of children's photos are being submitted to J.K. Rowling and the publishers, who are going to choose
photos of drawings.
Photos of drawings. So it's kids' drawings. Every release of chapters on the website comes with some suggestions of what illustrations will be needed in the book. The kids are making these illustrations, and their parents are showing them on Twitter. So lovely, heartwarming stuff. Unfortunately, quite a lot of the Twitter netizens are still extremely angry at J.K. Rowling, and there's a lot of trolling and, frankly, pornography being put beneath a lot of these posts. J.K. Rowling is being a little less controlled in what she's saying. So there were a few tweets that she sent out that sent the trans enthusiasts wild. I think the one that had the biggest impact was on 6th of June 2020, and it was
you think?
Yeah, it was in response to a report about menstruation and what needs to be done to protect people. But rather than talking about women, they talked about gender-neutral people who menstruate. So she tweeted, "People who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for these people. Someone help me out. Wumben, Wimpum, Woomud." Okay, so it's typical J.K. Rowling humor, but was very much not appreciated by a very, very vocal minority. So we then get about 4 days grace, and J.K. Rowling does something quite remarkable. So she puts something on her own website. So she has in my own words section of the website where was made for this, basically for writing about her own opinions. And she writes, J.K. Rowling writes about her reasons for speaking out on sex and gender issues. And I'm not going to read out anything from it here because, frankly, I won't do it justice. But it is a thoughtful, considered, specific, as in she talks about these are my reasons and some background behind the reasons. If she talks about I read a study that, she tells you what the study is so that you can go and check about it. Goes into some history. So she mentions that lots of people objected to her years before this blew up. She followed a young lady called Magdalen Burns, a Scottish gender critical activist, who has since sadly died. But it's a very, I think, heartfelt, well-reasoned, specific contribution. This is why I am doing this, about which you've been silent previously. Well, if that joke about Wimpun was ill received, then this statement basically puts the big names in the fandom at war with J.K. Rowling. So on the 1st of July, all of the big websites, so we're talking about Leaky Cauldron, MuggleNet, the Steve Vander Ark's website, Lexicon, HPANA, about, I'm sure, more anon, but all of the big websites took out a joint statement, which was a masterclass in being the exact opposite of J.K. Rowling's release, in that it was vague, it was non-specific. And I will read you out some of this because I think I can do it a little bit of justice. The Harry Potter fandom has been going strong for more than 20 years, and we are proud to have been there alongside so many, celebrating, learning, and growing together. As this fandom enters its third decade, J.K. Rowling has chosen this time to loudly pronounce harmful and disproven beliefs about what it means to be a transgender person. Now, that's about as vague as you can get. And again, I invite you to go back through J.K. Rowling's statement and look at what can be taken to be first loud, because this was just, you had to find a website to read it. What was harmful and what was disproven. Even try and find in that statement something that is a belief about a transgender person. It's just not in there. So what the fandom was doing was reacting to the anger that J.K. Rowling had engendered among trans activists. That's what they're reacting to. They're not reacting to what she's actually done, just like her original tweet in December 2019 said nothing objectionable. What everyone was reacting to was the anger of somebody else, not what was causing it at all. Soapbox quietly put away. So,
well, I mean, this is that statement put out by all the Harry Potter fan sites. They never asked Hogwarts professor for our opinion on this subject, and we became personae non grata. You know, we were off the board. And I left MuggleNet. I had been podcasting for MuggleNet for, at that point, 10 years, and boom, all that was gone. Melissa Anelli wrote the foreword to one of my books. That relationship, toast. And I had done nothing. I had done nothing, except to say that what Rowling was saying was best. You mentioned that Rowling in her statement made five points. And the third one was about freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Was just, that we had to do that. And if you know how Rowling structures everything, you look to the center one first. And yet they did everything they could to cancel her, to let them, don't read her, don't do this and that, don't mention her name. It was pretty dark times. And what was bizarre was that statement comes out in the midst of the Ichabod's release.
Yeah.
And so the world you're describing of true Harry Potter fandom, families with their children enjoying this wonderful story and this really archetypal adventure, and the children drawing pictures of it and posting it, and Rowling responding with usually just a lot of emojis,
Yeah.
and on the other hand, you had these ideologues, with firebrands, as you said, responding with hate, saying that she was the hateful and hurtful person. And it never was there more vivid an example of groupthink and self-righteousness, because supposedly Rowling was hurting transgender people. I mean, it was absolutely a bizarre event. And again, that was 5 years ago now, and there's been no public. I shouldn't say that. There have been a few people that have said, "Hey, I was wrong on this issue," but very few, and none among the leadership from Harry Potter fandom.
No.
Oh well. Maybe it'll be 15 years down the line or whatever. But the time for as you said, off soapbox. So that's where Rowling is. She's involved in the midst of that kind of madness, and yet she's got these two books. One of them is a book that you described that history yesterday. It's shrouded in mystery is probably the best way to put it. I think that she rewrote it in the lead up to this controlled demolition of her public personae, her mask, that she decided to take off that mask and show, what she's really about. And then there's Troubled Blood, which I'm a big Troubled Blood fan, as you've said, Nick. I think that really, if you're going to talk about the meaning of Rowling as a writer, you've got Deathly Hallows, you have Christmas Pig, and you've got Troubled Blood. And of those three, Troubled Blood is the most literary. The literariness, as they say, of that book is astonishing. Rowling talked once about writing so that if you imagined it as a bag of candies, every time you put your hand into the bag, you would find one more at the bottom. There's always something else to find.
Yeah.
And I was writing my PhD thesis during this, and this bomb dropped between the lake and the shed and the arrival of Troubled Blood. My thesis went through just, and Christmas Pig comes out soon after. So it was just, I couldn't believe it. It was just like, wow, if I had finished my thesis before that, it would have been totally, I would have had to totally rewrite it because of the arrival of those two things. But today we're going to talk about the lake and the shed of the astrology, right, Nick?
Yeah. So vital, very, very important, if not vital, for Troubled Blood. And you can tell that right from the first page, which is the dedications. The dedication is to William Lyon and Lynn Corbett for inspiration and for checking my calculations. Well, we've spoken about this before, but what calculations? Well, they are professional astrologers. When we were talking about Paris when we did the Crimes of Grindelwald show, this is the book that they wrote, Sextrology. So you're one up on me, John. I haven't read it, but they first met in Paris while Joe was out there teaching at a lycée as a 1 year abroad as part of her French degree, and they were in Paris at that time, traveling. We don't know, but we can assume that they were staying in the same pension, so they were staying in the same sort of living quarters. And we know something of their early career. So, 1996, we know that they were writing for a teen magazine as astrologers. So just the very simple sun readings that you get in daily or weekly publications. At some point, they both received training at the London-based Faculty of Astrological Studies. And just as Harry Potter was starting to become a global phenomenon in 2000, they started writing their magnum opus, which is sextrology. So this was their idea, to split the astrological signs into male and female and have separate male and female readings. That was published in 2004 by a major publisher, HarperCollins. It was a bestseller. So the best estimates I can get are 100,000 copies sold, which is substantial.
I'm seeing that market, that field, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they publish as, so they both took on pen names, and it also became their professional names for their work, consulting with celebrities and high net worth individuals, and that is Stella Starsky and Quinn Cox. Now, I say 100,000 is my best estimate. They have in magazines drop numbers that are many times greater than that, into the millions. I don't find that quite as credible. And for many years after that, they had this celebrity consultancy, and they used to do magazine interviews, and they would do some shows as well along the US East Coast. Now, they are the facts. That's sort of what we know. We don't know, although it seems likely, that when they were in Paris for that year together, they talked about astrology. We do know that Jo Rowling, from testimony of one of her teachers, Steve Eddy, was interested. She was interested in tarot readings and palm readings at that time. And we also know after that time, very early in her life in Edinburgh, she was making very detailed and professional star charts for her friends and their families. And some of those have come up for auction. One of which that John managed to get a copy of. You've put a review on the Hogwarts Professor, and it's well worth looking at it, because it really is.
Well, I did not find that. That is the Rowling Library's find.
Okay.
And unfortunately, they put it under a title, this find, that would not have cued you to the fact that this was Rowling's star chart, but it was up for auction. The Rowling Library and Patricia Tarantino specifically were able to download a copy of the one that they put up for the auction, which I think was of the child. She did one for the two parents and for the child. And she illustrated it. She named 7 or 8 different reference texts inside these charts, but all of those books were actually from this one book, Macnice's Astrology, from Doubleday. And so, all the reference that she made to the other texts were from the footnotes and the references in this book. So if you want to get one book that we know that Rowling has on astrology, it's Macnice's Astrology. And they're not only professional. I mean, I've gone through them and played with them. The one that we have, if you put the things into what are now available, you can just get these things instantly online. Rowling had to actually use the series of books to actually calculate this stuff out. She's spot on.
Yeah.
And she's creative, you know, that her interpretations are not mechanical and not just lifted from McNeice. She really has a sense for this kind of thing.
And it's quite a funny bit of prose as well.
Oh, yeah.
So you can tell that Rowling wrote it.
She's almost laughing at what
Yeah.
she's doing and teasing them that, oh, this is what the stars say will happen, but it's not. It's I don't know if you want to call it parody versus satire or whatever, but I mean, she's not mocking. She's not doing this in the voice of Trelawney, where
No.
she's laughing up her sleeve at the whole astrological adventure. She's laughing more like, let's not take this too serious. And that's, I'm probably anticipating what you're going to say about.
Well, that sort of leads me on to the so what. So this rational, thoughtful Christian author seems to be fascinated with trying to tell the future. Now, we haven't got on to I Ching yet, which we get to in Running Grave, but we have at least palmistry, we have tarot readings, and we have astrology. In the words of Strike, if you look carefully, said Strike, you might just see an asteroid passing through the house of bollocks. So what is she doing? What is she doing with this stuff? So I have a theory. So it's not a lake thing, but it's my theory. So if you look at the shed artist,
there's an annex in my shed here, Nick. If you want to come over here, there's plenty of room in my garage here in Oklahoma City. Just anyway, go ahead.
So if you look in John's shed over there, you will find chiasmus, you will find structure, and I think Rowling is fascinated with structure and patterns, and I think that shows in her work. And I think for her, the practice of astrology and tarot is about chasing those patterns. And I think the truth of what she believes in those patterns, you will find in Sybil Trelawney. Of course, it's all ridiculous. It is all ridiculous. But isn't it funny, John, how it always seems to work that way anyway?
Yeah. I mean, wow. Are we segueing here? Are we segueing to the shed? Was that your point?
Well, I'm in your shed now, so unless you want to pop over here to the lake.
Oh boy, I would love to pop over there. It is hot in Wales right now, but and your houses aren't built for heat.
No.
We're definitely built for heat here in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
But,
so air conditioning, as every Englishman knows, air conditioning is a privilege, not a right.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine in Houston moved from California, from Los Angeles, and he said, "I've never lived in a place where deodorant was not optional." And that is certainly the case in Oklahoma City as well as in Houston. Though Houston has its own stake in that. Yeah, I have to begin my shed portion about astrology by apologizing to Presbytera. I promised that I was going to do a true book analysis, and then realized while putting it together that if you don't have those true book pictures in front of you, as well as the Thoth tarot card deck, it's like doing a comparative analysis of the Last Supper and the Mona Lisa and not having either one of those pictures in front of you. I mean, it's just it doesn't work in this medium. So I'm going to go with astrology instead. Though that you need a little bit for astrology as well. So I'm going to talk about astrology, and Nick gave me the segue, and there's a lot to talk about in terms of the astrology of this book. The first thing I want to say is we're going through these things so quickly here in this Kanreki exercise, which we didn't explain at the beginning of this talk, Nick. How about that? We didn't talk about Kanreki. Is that's astrological, right, Nick?
Yeah.
This Kanreki exercise is about Chinese astrology that that after you get to your 60th year is the beginning of your second cycle of the 60 years of the Chinese animals and elements, the 12 animals and the 5 elements. And the reason this is fun for us, Nick and I as Nippronophiles or phones, because it plays so much into Rowling's artistry. So I'm gonna talk about some of the backdrop that Nick's already reviewed here, and then I'm going to talk about a really bizarre element to Troubled Blood that I think has only been discussed at Hogwarts Professor, though with an assist from Lindsay at the Strike and Ellicott files. You know, I can't tell you how much I appreciated that lift. Believe me. All right, let's get into this. I'm looking at my floor here for assistance. Sexuality is not going to help me here. Okay, Rowling is not only literate in myths and folklore, but she's adept in more than one occult art. Okay, a fact that was kept well under wraps during the years of the Potter Panic. If that astrological chart had come up during the Potter Panic or Potter Mania, wow, what that would have done for all the people that were Harry haters to know that she was a certifiable astrologer. As Nick has said, Rowling, while in school, was an amateur astrologer and a tarot card and palm reader. She's said to have delighted her friends with comic readings of their character and futures via palmistry and card spreads. Steve Eddy, one of her teachers, her comprehensive, left teaching to become a professional astrologer. And Rowling was her friend with Starsky and Koch. Okay. Now, her astrological practice was serious enough that in 1994, when she was drafting Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, she cast 3 horoscopes of a mother and father with newborn child she had befriended, which natal charts Nick's already talked about here. All of her fictional characters, whose birthdays are known, behave in conformity to their astrological star signs. Tarot card imagery is implicitly and explicitly deployed in her Harry Potter and Cormoran Strike books. And the symbols and sequences of literary alchemy inform everything she has written to date. And alchemy and astrology are complementary sciences. The metals and the principal planets are considered to be twinned. Okay. And today's subject, her longest book, at least as of 2020, has as its primary embedded text the true book. The astrological chart and tarot card images in this notebook are the subject of the 2 detectives' study throughout their investigation and reflect both the author's lifetime study of occult arts and her relationship with them. Okay, and it's necessary to get here that she denies belief in magic or astrology in every discussion of these subjects that she's had publicly. The occult arts, consequently, cannot be described as belonging to her core beliefs, but remain a significant part of her mental makeup and literary toolkit. Nick, I'm claiming this for the shed, buddy. She has, however, been quoted as saying, "I believe in God, not magic," which, really her core beliefs, you have to talk about her Christian faith, and we've been neglecting that. I'm gonna have to put on my lake hat sometime, Nick. Put on my snorkel or whatever, and get into the lake. Anyway, Troubled Blood, this is what I want to talk about today, incredibly, is, until Running Grave, Rowling's most involved and precisely woven tapestry as far as ring composition goes. Okay. When I first read the books, first read Troubled Blood, I did the nonsensical thing of reading each part independently. It took me 6 weeks to read the book, 7 weeks. And I would put a huge post up saying what I think was happening. And what I noticed very quickly was, from the first part of the book, there's 7 parts of the book, that the parts were rings. Okay. The novel as a whole is a ring composition. The latches in parts 1 and 7. The story turn is in part 4, which you'd expect in a 7-part book, which creates an axis in conjunction with the first and last parts. And the corresponding parts to and from that center, 2 and 6 as well, and 3 and 5 match up for the classic turtleback structure. The book corresponds as well with the 7-book turtleback structure of the Harry Potter novels and reflecting the 3rd novel in the series, Career of Evil. And once again, its corresponding book in the Hogwarts Saga, Order of the Phoenix, the PSI, right? For real ring race, who know that the 5th book in the Potter series, Ring, corresponds closely with the 1st book in that series, there are also many notes connecting Troubled Blood with Cuckoo's Calling. Okay, that's the first cold case that Robin and Cormoran solve, and with Philosopher's Stone. But incredibly, there's more. Each of the first 6 parts of Troubled Blood is written as a ring composition within itself. The first 2 parts, being 7-chapter rings in reflection of the book's 7 parts, and the first 7 books of Strike being a ring too. This is wheels within wheels within wheels. This is structural artistry that, however arcane it may seem to a reader new to Rowling Galbraith's formal fetish, is really only more of the same to those of us who have been charting her novel rings and longer Twitter threads since 2010. With Troubled Blood, however, Rowling adds a completely different dimension of structure and style that reflects and reinforces the symbolic and thematic meaning of the book. And really, there's a post that's down below there. There's a link down below about Strike's transformation inside this book, where he comes from being kind of a grumpy man who wants no commitments. He's a Capricorn. He wants no commitments or Sagittarius. It shows how well how up to speed I am on this. He's and by the end of the book, he's singing the song of the Western man, and he's been corrected by Robin enough to realize that he needs to grow up. He needs to make a commitment. He needs to understand what his life is about from more than just reflex moment to moment. And while he's saying it's all bullocks to the astrological thing, he does understand that his astrological chart describes him to a T. Right? But in terms of the formal artistry, okay, Strike 5, and this people find this hard to believe, but here we go. Strike 5 is also laid out as an astrological chart, more easily visualized as a clock face, whose 12 sections or houses correspond with the 12 houses of Western horoscope natal charts, and the 3 groupings of these houses into St. John's crosses. In astrological languages, these bundles are called angular, succedent, and cadent houses. But okay, Rowling gives you, this isn't just John's crazy fetish. Rowling points us to this interpretation in 4 ways. First, the astrological clock at Hampton Court was the defining image in the book's marketing. The cover designer said this was Rowling's choice. Nick found that thing. Thank you, Nick, for finding that they testified to that. If that isn't enough, the chapter in which we first see the astrological clock includes the revelation that Margot used to leave her husband messages hidden inside an ornate clock in their living room. Roy confesses in the next chapter that his wife left a cry of the heart to him, "Talk to me," in just this fashion the week of her disappearance. The idea then of a secret message in a clock is pretty loudly, is on loud display there, open display. Second, there's an astrological chart drawn up by Talbot for the moment of Margot Bamborough's disappearance, which is simultaneously dismissed by the dynamic duo as Looney Tunes, and it is studied endlessly by them. It gives the literal and figurative shape to their supposed to be year-long investigation. And that Talbot chart corresponds exactly with the Aries to Pisces organization of the standard 12 houses organization of astrological charts. The third thing she tells us as a clue is that the story is set as a 1-year frame, a deadline established by Anna Phipps and Kim Sullivan that corresponds to the zodiac cycle. The dynamic duo worked 2 extra months after failing to meet the deadline an addendum in addition to the traditional cycle of 12 that Rowling, I think, teasingly refers to via the embedded text of Astrology 14 by Stephen Smith that adds 2 constellations to the zodiac. I think, Nick, that you said the other day that that's something that Starsky and Cox came up with.
Yeah.
All right. Fourth and last on my listing, St. John's crosses are spread throughout Troubled Blood, most notably in Clerkenwell, at the Phipps Gazebo, in a brick at Hampton Court, and in the dig here note of the novel's Hermes figure, Carl Bryce Oakton, messenger of the oak holder, which is a reference to Zeus, which is, of course, a reference to Johnny Rokeby, whose name is also about the oak tree. This is a Zeus thing. All right. In which readers are told that the secret of the book is to be found buried beneath the 8-point cross. Now, what I'm saying here is that Rowling sets up the astrological clock inside her book, or the astrological chart, so that the 7-chapter bundles that you get to these 12 houses correspond with the meaning of the houses on an astrological chart. And another pointer that she does this is that Strike and Robin discuss the houses, right? Isn't that where he says it's all bullocks? Nick, I mean, yeah. He highlights something that is absolutely unnecessary, really, to the book's plot, and has Strike say there's nothing to that, which to the serious reader of Rowling Galbraith means pay close attention to this. Okay? I mean, there's 2 houses. In the post down below in which I talk about the astrological chart, you can go through all 12 of the houses, and 8 of them are pretty strong, and 4 of them are kind of weak. And Lindsay at the Strike Ellicott Files took the challenge. I said I couldn't see anything in those 4 houses, and Lindsay just drilled it. She made the 4 as strong as many of the 8 that I had found. I was just like, oh, this is the serious reader that makes the Hogwarts professor, oh, I'm not totally wasting my time, Anyway, McNeice, remember that book that we know she has? He describes the 8th house as death, dissolution, loss. The wife's or husband's wealth and possessions, the partner's property, legacies, bequests, and wills. Again, we have the kind of, voodoo prophecy language of astrology, but death, dissolution, and loss. Descriptions of how to understand the 12 houses can be rather squishy. The 8th and the 12th house, not so much. And the 8th, least squishy of all. Death can be figurative, of course, but we're looking for a physical corpse in the 8th house chapter set if Troubled Blood is an astrological chart. And the 8th house of Troubled Blood by my division of the 73 chapters is chapters 43 to 48. In chapter 43, we learn about Max Priestwood's mutilated heart and his recovery before Robin returns to her bedroom and receives the phone call from Strike in which he apologizes to her. Okay. Boy, Max Priestwood in his heart. Yeah, the largest priest's cross. This is another symbol of the cross here, right? In his mutilated heart. She receives the phone call from Strike in which he apologizes to her. Cormoran dies, if you will, to his old man and becomes a new man, one on a hero's journey to mythic Cornwall to be at the bedside of the wise crone, Joan Nancarrow. She dies at the end of the next chapter. The death and benediction that are the book's beginning, middle, and end. The 8th house chapter set ends with Joan's funeral, okay? In between, Robin visits the graveyard in Leamington Spa and has her weeping epiphany in a pub after visiting the cathedral there, in which she realizes that Strike is her best friend and that she loves him, warts, pube hair, and all, okay? Her wise crone is the one-eyed Paul Satchwell, who begrudgingly gives her the clue and push that takes Strike back to Janice Beatty. Okay, so again, the 8th house is death and dissolution, and wow, there's your biggest bullseye. The 12th house is almost as fixed as the 8th. Again, from McNeice, confinement, restraint, prison, exile, secret enemies, plots, large animals, Again, this is the house of Neptune, so weird stuff going on there. Robin actually tells Strike in Troubled Blood the meaning of the 12th house: enemies, secrets, sorrows, undoing. Woolfolk, kind of a standard in the field, uses almost these exact words. This is the house of secrets, sorrows, and self-undoing. She goes on to say that this is the end of the circle, defines the limitations placed on your life, including by yourself through self-undoing behavior. It rules unseen forces, secret enemies, escapism, asylums, hospitals, and prisons. The 12th house in Troubled Blood would be the final set of 7, chapters 67 to 73. Strike travels to Broadmoor, the UK asylum for mentally ill prisoners. In chapter 8, after solving the Bamborough disappearance case in 67, he interviews Dennis Creed, and through a brilliant knight's move, ensures the psychopath will never be freed. Robin and Barclay go to the literal house of secrets, the Aythorne apartment, and find Margot at last. Strike then moves to confront the murderer in her red room, which is, of course, murder spelled backwards, and he assures Roy Phipps in chapter 72 that Janice Duessa will die in prison. Okay, I'm going to even throw in a large animal nod to the donkey balloon we get in the last chapter. Okay, you'll recall that the donkeys are mentioned on the trip to Skegness. The largest animal is discussed in Strike 5, but they're absent there. They only show up in that last thing. Now, okay, if you want all the houses and Lindsay's brilliant thing, go to the thread. Lindsay spells out some great connections there. But those are the two, to me, the best ones, right? Death and the prison. That's a spot on, thing there. And then I want to make one more argument for the possibility that Rowling has organized her 73 chapters in correspondence with the 12 hours of a clock face and the 12 houses of an astrological chart. If you look at the novel's chapters this way, a St. John's cross jumps out at you. Okay, and if you don't know what a St. John's cross is, it's
a cross. It's a cross with a swallowtail at the end of each of the arms.
Okay, it's the Iron Cross, right, for the German medal.
Yeah.
Okay. There are 3 primary symbols that appear repeatedly in Troubled Blood. The most obvious is water. As Strike says more than once, water everywhere. He does so not just with respect to the rain and flooding in many chapters, but also within the astrological symbols in Talbot's chart. Astrology being the second great symbol set of Strike 5, and signs being sorted with respect to their 4 element qualities. The water signs of the 4 elements inside astrology are a big deal in Troubled Blood, or at least Talbot thought so. The 3rd symbol that appears everywhere is the St. John's or Maltese cross, an 8-point cross in Americans. That would be me speaking for all Americans here, Nick. We recognize as its kindred-shaped German military decoration the Iron Cross. As noted above, it's in Clerkenwell in multiple spots because of its ties with the St. John's Hospitallers, at Hampton Court, and at the Phipps Mansion. Okay, Carl Oakton uses it in his note to the Metropolitan Police in 1985. To see the St. John's Cross in the Troubled Blood astrological chart story, Scaffolding or 12 Houses, you need to know how the houses are grouped in a specific event that happens in 4 of the 12 Troubled Blood chapters. Houses. Rowling has a thing with houses, Nick. Nick, tell me you don't know your Hogwarts house.
I know, of course, I know my Hogwarts house, and I'm not one of these split houses either. I'm all Ravenclaw.
Yeah, you really?
Yeah.
What a surprise! One of the most brilliant men I know is a Ravenclaw. Okay, I'll go. Whoa. And what is my house, Nick?
I've got to say, you've got to be a hat stool between Gryffindor and Slytherin.
Yeah, anyway, I've discussed this at length. I've taken all the tests and I come up with all of them. So I'm really not. I think I'm really Slytherin because if anybody says that they're Hufflepuff, and my daughter Sarah says that I'm Hufflepuff. If anybody like me says they're Hufflepuff, that means they're actually Slytherin and they don't want you to know what's going on. Okay, they must.
It's a tactic.
Anyway,
yeah.
That's right. It's ambition. It's like I don't want this person thinking that I'm coming at them sideways because I'm coming at them sideways. Anyway, Rowling has a thing about houses. Okay, but the first and most important 4 of the houses inside astrology are the angular houses: 1, 4, 7, and 10. As Woolfolk explains, planets in these houses indicate that you will achieve some kind of prominence in the world. Okay, I don't want to go through all of it, but they correspond to the signs Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And this is important to us because Robin's a Libra. I think Strike's a Capricorn, maybe Sagittarius. Anyway, these are the signs which have one thing in common: they're all cardinal in nature. Okay, the cardinal mode. Here I'm quoting from the astrology place, something online here. The cardinal mode is known as an initiating or leading energy, and these angles or signs create primary experiences, change of seasons, etc. Astrologers believe that if you have many planets in the angular houses, you may display some of the cardinal qualities. Okay, action-oriented events that dominate the life. All right, and there's obviously in 12 houses, you have 3 of these 4 house sets. Looking at the troubled blood astrological charts, there's something that happens in the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10 houses that doesn't happen anywhere else. In those 4 houses, Strike loses his temper, as in caps locks rage. It's Order of the Phoenix Harry. Strike loses it consequent to a family member triggering his deep-set insecurities about his conception and family history, which ill mood Strike then proceeds to take out on Robin. In the 1st house, it's Lucy that teased Strike off because of his badgering him about favoring Lita over Joan and his being a bad uncle to his nephews. When Strike meets Robin in Falmouth, he is still in a foul temper because of this dawn confrontation to his closest relation, and of course his fall on the Faerie. Now, that's really the beginning of that stuff. By the end, not only does he tell Joan that she's his mother, but has really embraced her, and he's cursing himself for not having said this earlier. In the 4th house, Strike receives a birthday card from Rokeby, which he rips up, and still fuming, he's grumpy Gus again with Robin as he gets into the Land Rover for their trip to Irene Hickson's place. In the 7th house, Rokeby takes this up one thing and calls his prodigal son, or prodigal in the sense of prodigious or giant, as well as willfully estranged. And Strike proceeds to get pissed, here in the sense of drunk off his arse as well as angry. And he and Robin come to verbal blows in the street outside her flat after the Valentine's Day dinner with Max and family. In the 10th house, Rokeby does a limousine cameo appearance. Robin sees as he approaches the American bar for her Strike meeting with Carl Oakton. Oakton throws the detail of Strike's public and shameful 1974 misconception in another American bar, actually one in New York City, in his face. And Strike, predictably, I hope by this time, explodes and hits Robin rather than his intended target. You color in those 4 houses, Nick. The cardinal and angular houses of the troubled blood chart, in which Strike is angry about his family and specifically about Rokeby and Lita's hookup, and flares at Robin, and what you have is a St. John's cross. I confess, when I first came up with this, and this took a lot of work, I took the clues that there was an astrological clock in this, and then I laid it out. I mean, you've seen me do this, Nick. I paste together, big pieces of paper and draw a circle on it, and then start, trying to get the connections to line up, see if there's anything to this. That's how I came up with the whole ring composition theory. It was everybody that Rowling seems to admire writes in rings. Does she do that? Oh my gosh! Anyway, this St. John's cross to me is a decent standalone argument for Rowling Galbraith having deliberately crafted an astrological clock structure for troubled blood. Add in the 6 relatively strong correspondences between the chapter events with their placement in the 12 houses, and I think the need to debunk the possibility falls on skeptics. at least as much as it's my responsibility to make the case for it. That Rowling Galbraith wanted the astrological clock at Hampton Court uses the principal image in the book's marketing, and she includes a clock that holds a secret message in one of her central chapters, is icing on that cake, especially if you draw the cake as an astrological clock. This is over the top artistry. It's stuff that none of the readers, to include people that read it as slowly as I did, picked up on. And something I want to talk about tomorrow is Faerie Queene. Spenser's Faerie Queene. Spenser scholars, and they are legion. They I think they have secret conventions. I can say some of my best friends are.
I've never heard of Spenserians being legion. I'm now a little bit concerned. Are they going to gang up on us?
No. Actually, they love Trouble Blood with more ardor than I do, because and they're the ones that say yes, there is an astrological clock embedded in this because Faerie Queene has an astrological structure. That's been a given among Spenser scholars for close to a century now, and it's one of the reasons that the Chronicles of Narnia has an astrological, symbolic backdrop, is because C.S. Lewis was a member of that Spenserian club, as well as a Jane Austen club. That Rowling embeds this astrological chart inside this book, which she had to be confident that nobody would pick up on for a long time, if ever. It's intricate, but maybe it's something that someone's going to realize several hundred years down the line, as they did with Spenser, or close to 100 years down the line, as Michael Ward did with C.S. Lewis's Chronicle of Narnia. And of course, Hogwarts Professor. We jumped. We found it first, and it really is that Rowling was writing this book while planning her controlled demolition, a book that, if she had died, forgive me, if she had died before she completed the Strike book series, would have been something akin to Spenser's not finishing Faerie Queene.
Yeah.
That this all-in intertextuality, literary illusion, whatever you want to call it, this all-in parallelism with Spenser and his Faerie Queene might have been. Did she feel that she was going to lose her publishing contracts, Nick? Do you think she was? No. Did she anticipate being canceled that much?
I mean,
just a possibility.
It had to have crossed her mind, but I mean, surely she would have had Neil Blair whispering in her ear. She could, if any of her publishers decided to cease publishing her and break their contract, could you imagine the queue, the bidding wars?
Or, as she's done with her online publication of the ancillary books for Harry Potter, she simply could have, as we talked about.
Yeah,
that's right. And sold it in serial fashion the way Dickens did.
Just something else she's got in common with Owen Quine. Well, that's great. I'm looking forward to Faerie Queene tomorrow. So I don't know how I'm gonna sort of match that in terms of lake work. I think we're gonna have to.
There's some great lake stuff for this time period.
Yeah.
And you're really not. You did a great job on the astrological piece, but Nick, you said at the beginning of this, there's lake and there's shed. This book is so wonderfully sheddy.
Yeah.
And I think Beatrice Groves talked about this, or you've talked about this with me, that the books that Rowling has read has to be considered a buoy in the lake.
Yeah.
Books that she loves.
Yeah.
And really there's a medieval morality play inside Troubled Blood as well. The fact that Margot Bamborough's name means the pearl, and the pearl is an everyman drama from the medieval canon.
Yeah.
There's so much going on.
Famously translated by Tolkien. But also I'm reminded that when we had that short video clip of Rowling's color-coded library that upset so many people, not least me, because it meant all the really exciting books with the black covers were too far away. But she has a Spenser quote from the Faerie Queene above her bookcases. So yeah, I think it means a lot to her, and I think that certainly deserves to live in the lake.
Yeah. Anyway, I look forward to tomorrow's conversation, and what I really hope for this is these two things. We're not just going to do one of these things, is to really encourage people to reread Troubled Blood if they haven't reread it already, and to spend some time going through all the Hogwarts professor commentary. There's a whole series of posts by Elizabeth Baird Hardy and Beatrice Groves about the connections between the books. I think they missed the main one, Nick. That's for tomorrow. But still, the work they've done is work that an author can only hope that someone will find sometime. It's so subliminal and yet so powerful. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like the ring writing. Once you understand that she writes in these chiastic structures, you're looking for them everywhere, and they're there. All right. So tomorrow, what are you going to say for the lake? What are you going to say about the lake?
So I'm gonna go back to one of the dark periods in the Seven Ages of Joe, and I'm going to look at Rowling in London.
I'm going full Spenser. I'm going to talk about Strike and Margot Bamborough as the Redcrosse Knight, and Oonaugh, obviously, as Oonaugh, who's Redcrosse Knight's foil, and Robin as Strike's Oonaugh. And I can't wait to share with you some of the hilarious embedded parallels between the first book of Faerie Queene and Troubled Blood.
Excellent. I'm going to look forward to that. I'll see you tomorrow.